What if I told you there was a time when eating a tomato could make your neighbors think you had a death wish?
Is it truly safe
Sounds
to touch?
impossible.
They say the red ones carry the
Today,
fever.
tomatoes
Nonsense.
are everywhere.
Though I shall
on
certainly
pizzas,
not be tasting
in
it
burgers,
myself.
mixed into salads, simmering in pasta sauces, and hiding inside the ketchup found in millions of homes. They're one of the most familiar foods on Earth. Yet for nearly 200 years, many Europeans believed this ordinary fruit could kill anyone brave enough to eat it. So, how did a harmless tomato become one of history's most feared foods? The answer isn't as simple as superstition. It's a story of exploration, misunderstanding, and one of history's most expensive mistakes. That single mistake delayed the acceptance of one of the world's most important foods for generations and turned an everyday fruit into a symbol of danger.
As tomatoes traveled from the farms of South America to the grand banquet tables of European nobles, something unexpected happened. The fruit that had safely fed entire civilizations suddenly earned the reputation of a silent killer. And then the mystery became even stranger. Some wealthy people really did become sick, and some even died not long after eating tomatoes. To everyone watching, the conclusion seemed obvious. The tomato had to be poisonous. But appearances can be dangerously misleading. The tomato may have been completely innocent all along, while the real danger was hiding in plain sight, resting on the very tables where those meals were served. To understand how an innocent fruit was put on trial for a crime it never committed, we first have to travel thousands of years into the past, long before Europe had ever heard the word tomato. Because that's where this remarkable story truly begins. Before tomatoes became the star
What
of
strange
pizzas,
fruit is
the
this?
secret ingredient in
Do you
pasta
think it is
sauces,
safe to eat?
or the sweet red flavor hidden inside ketchup bottles, they had a completely different identity. The first tomatoes were not the large, perfect, bright red fruits sitting in supermarkets today. If you traveled thousands of years into the past and saw one growing in the wild, you might not even recognize it as a tomato. Small fruits, sometimes no bigger than a marble, hung from green vines beneath the South American sun, growing quietly in a world that had no idea this little plant would one day transform the way billions of people eat. The story of the tomato begins in the valleys of western South America, especially around regions that are now part of Peru and Ecuador. But here's the surprising part. The people who discovered tomatoes did not see them as strange or dangerous. They saw potential. While later generations would argue over whether tomatoes were poisonous, ancient communities had already spent centuries understanding this unusual plant. They observed which plants produced better fruit, saved the best seeds, and slowly changed the tomato through careful farming.
Long before modern science explained genetics, they were practicing a form of selective breeding. They were choosing the strongest plants, the tastiest fruits, and the varieties that grew better in their environment. Every season, they were quietly shaping the future of one of the world's most important foods. But the tomato's journey was not just about farming. It was about culture. Across the Americas, tomatoes became part of everyday life. They appeared in local markets, traditional meals, and family kitchens. Civilizations such as the Maya and Aztecs used tomatoes alongside ingredients like chilies, herbs, beans, and squash. To them, the tomato was not a mystery. It was not a danger. It was simply food. And this creates one of the biggest contradictions in the entire story.
What strange fruit is this?
While centuries
Do you think
later,
it is safe to
Europeans
eat?
would look at tomatoes and wonder, could this fruit kill us? People
What
across
strange
the
fruit
Americas
is this?
had already been eating them
Do you
safe
think it is
for
safe to eat?
generations. Children grew up with tomatoes on their plates. Farmers harvested them every year. Entire communities understood something that much of Europe would later forget. The tomato was never the villain. The fear came later. But before the tomato became feared, it first had to make one of the most important journeys in history. In the 15th and 16th centuries, ships began crossing
What
the
strange
Atlantic,
fruit is
carrying
this?
not just explorers,
Do you think
but
it is
an
safe to
entire
eat?
world of new foods. Potatoes, corn,
corn, cacao, and countless other plants traveled to places where they had never been seen before. Among them was the humble tomato. And that tiny red fruit was about to enter a world where appearance mattered more than experience, where unfamiliar plants created suspicion, and where one simple misunderstanding would transform.
The moment tomatoes arrived in Europe, they were not welcomed as a miracle from the New World. They were treated as a possible threat. Imagine a European garden in the 1500s. A strange green plant grows from the soil, carrying small, bright red fruits unlike anything people have ever seen before. To modern eyes, it looks familiar, but to someone living centuries ago, it was a mystery. And throughout history, mysteries have often created fear before they create curiosity. The tomato had crossed an ocean, entered a completely different culture, and suddenly found itself in a world where nobody knew its story. Europeans had no connection to the farmers who had carefully cultivated it for generations. They did not know that entire civilizations across the Americas had been eating tomatoes safely for centuries. They only saw something unfamiliar. And that was the beginning of the problem. The issue was not that tomatoes looked dangerous. The issue was that they looked unknown. In the 16th century, ships were bringing an entire collection of strange new foods into Europe. Potatoes, peppers, cacao, corn, and tomatoes were arriving from lands Europeans had never seen before. Some of these foods would eventually become essential parts of global cuisine, but at first, many people approached them with caution. The tomato faced an even bigger challenge. It belonged to the Nightshade family, a group of plants that included some genuinely poisonous species, such as deadly nightshade. Because of this connection, many people began wondering whether this unfamiliar red fruit might share the same dangers. The tomato had not done anything wrong, but it was being judged because of its family. It was like accusing someone of being dangerous because of the actions of a distant relative. And then another problem appeared. The tomato looked unusual.
Its bright color, soft texture, and unfamiliar shape made it unlike the foods Europeans already trusted. Without modern scientific knowledge, people often relied on appearance, tradition, and rumors to decide what was safe to eat. Slowly, suspicion began replacing curiosity. A fruit that had been ordinary across the Americas was becoming a mystery in Europe. But fear alone does not create a legend that survives for 200 years. A strange plant can make people nervous for a while, but eventually people either accept it or forget it. For the tomato to become known as a dangerous food, something more powerful had to happen. It needed evidence. And that evidence appeared in the homes of wealthy Europeans. People began noticing something that seemed impossible to ignore. After certain meals, some individuals became seriously ill. The timing appeared clear. The tomato was present, and sickness followed. To people living at that time, the conclusion seemed obvious. The strange red fruit from across the ocean must be responsible. But history was about to reveal one of its greatest misunderstandings. The tomato was not the killer. It was only the suspect. And the evidence that seemed to prove its guilt was hiding a completely different truth.
For a rumor to survive for 200 years, it needs more than fear. Fear can create suspicion, but suspicion eventually fades. A legend this powerful needs something stronger. It needs evidence. And in the case of the tomato, that evidence seemed to appear in the most unexpected place, the dining rooms of wealthy Europeans. Picture an elegant banquet in the 1600s. Candlelight dances across polished silver goblets. Servants carry steaming dishes to a table where every detail reflects wealth and status. Among the exotic foods brought from distant lands sits a bright red fruit that few people fully understand: the tomato. No one at that table could have imagined they were about to become part of one of history's greatest food mysteries.
Then a strange pattern began to emerge. After meals that included tomatoes, some wealthy diners became seriously ill. Families noticed it, guests whispered about it. Stories spread from one dinner table to the next. The tomato was served. Someone became sick. To the people living at the time, the conclusion seemed obvious. The tomato must be poisonous. And once enough people believed they had seen proof, the rumor became far more dangerous than the fruit itself. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. Many historians believe one important reason these incidents seemed so convincing had nothing to do with poison inside the tomato. Instead, the danger may have been hiding in something people trusted every single day.
One family added tomatoes to a simple meal. Then another. They waited. Nothing happened.
Is it truly safe to
No
touch?
mysterious
They say the
illness.
red ones carry the fever.
No sudden
Nonsense.
tragedy.
Though
The
I shall
family
certainly
simply
not be
finished
tasting
dinner
it myself.
and came back for
Did you
tomatoes
hear about the new
again
apples?
another day.
They say they are poison.
Then another family did the same.
I heard they cause
and
the
another.
blight. Do not touch
Without
them.
realizing
They
it,
say it is the
ordinary
poison
people
apple.
were conducting the greatest
Keep your
experiment
distance,
the
Thomas.
tomato had ever faced.
I heard the vendor brought
Not
them from the
inside
New
a
World.
laboratory.
Is it truly safe
Not
to
in
touch?
a royal
They
palace,
say the red ones
but
carry the
around
fever.
everyday dinner
Nonsense.
tables.
Though I shall
Meal
certainly
after
not be
meal,
tasting it
the
myself.
terrifying legend
They say
failed
it
to
is
come
the
true.
poison apple.
Every safe
Keep
bite
your distance,
quietly
Thomas.
weakened a myth that had
I
survived
heard the
for
vendor brought them
generations.
from the New World.
Experience
Did
was
you hear about
accomplishing
the new
something
apples?
that arguments
They say
never
they are
could.
poison.
The facts were finally
I
beginning
heard
to
they
catch
cause
up
the
with the fear.
blight. Do not touch them.
But the battle was far from over. Because while parts of southern Europe were slowly learning to trust the tomato, another society across the Atlantic was only beginning its own trial. Ironically, the continent that had inherited the tomato from Europe would become the place where its reputation faced one final and very public test. And that single moment would help change the future of the tomato forever.
Their tableware. Many wealthy households used pewter plates, and some pewter contained significant amounts of lead. At the time, no one understood the hidden risks of lead exposure. The plates looked elegant. They looked expensive. They looked perfectly safe. They weren't always. Tomatoes are naturally acidic. When acidic foods remained in contact with lead-containing tableware, lead could leach into the meal. The people eating dinner had no way of seeing it happen. The poison was invisible. The tomato was not. Nobody could see the lead. Nobody could smell it. Nobody could taste it. But everyone could see the bright red fruit sitting in the middle of the plate. So when illness followed the meal, people blamed the one thing they could actually see. The tomato became the suspect, and the invisible danger escaped unnoticed. Whether this explains every story about poisonous tomatoes is still debated by historians. Fear of unfamiliar foods, confusion with poisonous nightshade plants, and the medical beliefs of the time also played important
Did you
roles.
hear about the new apples?
But together,
They say
these
they are
factors
poison.
created something far more powerful
I
than a
heard
simple
they cause the
misunderstanding.
blight. Do not touch
They
them.
created a
They
legend.
say it is the
A
poison
legend
apple.
repeated by neighbors,
Keep your
doctors,
distance, Thomas.
travelers, and even books,
I heard the vendor
until
brought
it
them
began
from
to
the New
sound
World.
like undeniable truth. And that may be the most fascinating part of this story. The tomato did not need to be poisonous.
In the
Just
17th
when
century, the
tomato
tomato was
finally
feared as a
seemed
poison.
to be escaping
But it was not
its
the fruit
nightmare
killing the
in
aristocrats.
Europe,
It was the
nightmare
lead in their
began
pewter plates.
all over again.
Another round for the
This
Duke.
time, on the other side of
Have
the
you seen
Atlantic,
the new arrival?
America
They say
didn't
it
just
is quite
inherit
deadly.
Europe's seeds. It inherited Europe's fears. Along with wheat, apples, and other familiar crops came an unfamiliar warning. Never trust the bright red tomato. But unlike Europe, America would become the place where that fear faced its most dramatic test. And it would all lead to one unforgettable story outside a courthouse in New Jersey. For years, the old beliefs lingered. Tomatoes appeared in gardens because they looked unusual and attractive, yet many families hesitated to bring them into their kitchens. Why risk eating something that generations had called poisonous? The warnings sounded old, respected, and familiar. And history has a way of making old stories feel true, even when no one remembers where they
What
began.
strange fruit is this?
Still, something
Do you
was
think it is
quietly
safe to eat?
changing.
curious gardeners tasted tomatoes for themselves.
What strange
Farmers
fruit
grew
is
them
this?
season after season.
Do you think it is
Cooks
safe to eat?
experimented with recipes that had arrived from Europe and the Mediterranean. The terrifying predictions rarely matched reality. The more people trusted their own experience, the harder it became to trust the old rumors. But changing private opinions was one thing. Changing public opinion was something else entirely. According to one of the most famous stories in tomato history, that moment came in 1820 in Salem, New Jersey. A respected military officer and farmer, Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson, was said to have walked up the steps of the county courthouse carrying a basket filled with ripe tomatoes.
Word spread quickly. A crowd gathered. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they believed they were about to witness a man poison himself in public. Johnson picked up a tomato. Then he took the first bite. The crowd watched in silence. He ate another. Then another. Minutes passed. He kept talking. He kept smiling.
In the 17th
He
century,
remained
the tomato
standing.
was feared as a
The
poison.
disaster
But
everyone
it was not the
expected
fruit killing
never
the
came.
aristocrats. It was the lead
Whether
in
this
their
happened
pewter plates.
exactly as later
Another
generations
round for the
describe,
Duke.
or whether the story grew
you
into
seen
a
the new
legend over
arrival?
time, is still
They say
debated
it
by
is
historians.
quite deadly.
But the legend survives because it captures a turning point that was very real. People were beginning to believe their own eyes instead of inherited fear. The tomato was finally escaping the prison of its reputation. Over the decades that followed, tomatoes appeared on more American dinner tables. At the same time, Mediterranean
bite,
cooking,
the wolf
especially
peach
from
was
Italy,
redeemed.
continued to
Pass the
demonstrate
ketchup,
just how
please.
versatile the
This
fruit
pizza
could be.
is incredible.
Recipes spread. Gardens expanded. Markets filled with tomatoes that previous generations would have refused to eat. The transformation was extraordinary. The fruit once whispered
What
about as
strange
poison
fruit is
would become
this?
the heart of pizza sauce.
Do you think it is
pasta
safe
dishes,
to eat?
salsa, soups, salads, ketchup,
What strange
and
fruit is
countless
this?
meals enjoyed by billions
Do you
of
think
people
it is
around
safe
the world.
to eat?
And perhaps that's the greatest twist in this entire story. The fruit that once made people fear for their lives is now one of the most trusted ingredients in the world's kitchens. A misunderstanding that lasted for centuries couldn't survive forever. But its story reminds us that history isn't only shaped by discoveries. Sometimes it's shaped by the courage to question what everyone else believes. After surviving centuries of fear,
What strange
rumors,
fruit is
and
this?
misunderstanding,
Do you
the
think it is
tomato
safe to eat?
finally became one of the most trusted foods on Earth.
What
But the
strange fruit is
strangest
this?
part of its story is
Do you
this.
think it is safe to eat?
Even after people accepted tomatoes, they still did not fully understand them. Because the tomato sitting in your kitchen today is not the same tomato that ancient civilizations first discovered thousands of years ago. It is the result of a journey shaped by nature, human curiosity, and generations of farmers who slowly transformed a small wild plant into one of the world's most important crops. The tomato was not simply discovered, it was created through thousands of years of human effort. Long before supermarkets displayed perfect red tomatoes, wild tomato plants produced fruits that looked completely different. They were smaller, less uniform, and often far from the large tomatoes people recognize today. The fruit that Europeans would later fear because of its strange appearance was not even the tomato we imagine now. And that reveals something fascinating. The tomato was never a fixed thing. It was always changing. For thousands of years,
In the 17th century,
in
the
fact,
tomato was
some
feared as a
people
poison.
referred to tomatoes
But it was not the
as
fruit killing the
golden
aristocrats.
apples.
It was the
Think
lead in
about
their
that.
pewter plates.
The fruit
Another
that would
round
later
for
be
the Duke.
feared as a poisonous red
Have you
apple
seen the new
was
arrival?
once viewed through
They say it
completely
is
different
quite
eyes,
deadly.
as a strange golden discovery from a distant world. Its reputation changed. Its appearance changed. Even its identity changed. And the tomato continued surprising people. Today, there are thousands of tomato varieties around the world. Some are smaller than a coin. Others
And
can
with
grow
that bite,
larger than
the
a
wolf
baseball.
peach was redeemed.
Some are sweet
Pass
like
the
fruit.
ketchup, please.
Others have a
This
sharp,
pizza is
acidic
incredible.
flavor. Some are yellow, orange, purple, or so dark they almost appear black. There is no single tomato.
There are thousands of different versions of the same incredible story. But perhaps the most surprising thing about tomatoes is not their size, color, or shape. It is how deeply they became connected to human life. The tomato traveled across oceans. It entered different cultures. It changed recipes, and people changed it in return. From ancient farmers in the Americas to Italian cooks, from family gardens to modern agriculture, countless generations played a role in creating the tomato we know today. The world did not fall in love with the tomato because the fruit suddenly became different. The world changed because people finally understood what had been there all along. The same fruit once rejected as dangerous became a symbol of creativity, culture, and human adaptation. The same fruit people once avoided became the foundation of pizza, pasta sauces, ketchup, salsa,
Is it truly
soups,
safe to
and
touch?
countless
They say the
meals
red ones
enjoyed
carry the
around the
fever.
world.
Nonsense.
And that may
Though I
be the
shall
greatest
certainly
lesson
not be
hidden
tasting it
inside the
myself.
tomato's history. Sometimes the things people fear are not dangerous. Sometimes they are simply misunderstood. So the next time you slice a tomato, remember that you are not just cutting a piece of fruit. You are touching a story that traveled across continents, survived centuries of doubt, and transformed from a feared mystery into a global treasure. A story about exploration.
The tomato was judged by appearance. It was judged by association. It was judged by stories. But eventually, those stories met reality. Every meal where nothing went wrong. Every family that gave tomatoes a chance. Every cook who discovered a new recipe. Every person who questioned an old belief slowly changed the future of the tomato. The fruit did not need to prove itself. Time
Did you hear
proved it.
about the new apples?
And that
They
is
say
the
they are
greatest lesson
poison.
hidden inside this simple
I heard
red
they
fruit.
caused the blight. Do
The
not
tomato
touch them.
did not become
They
valuable
say it
because
is the
it changed.
poison apple.
It became
Keep your
valuable
distance,
because people
Thomas.
finally understood
I
what
heard
had
the vendor
always
brought
been
them
there.
from the New World.
A plant that began in the Americas became a symbol of Italian cuisine. A fruit once feared in Europe became a daily ingredient in kitchens across the world. A food once rejected became part of the memories and traditions of billions of people. That is the incredible power of food. Food is not just something we eat. It carries journeys. It carries cultures. It carries the stories of the people who grew it, changed it, and shared it. From ancient fields in the Americas, to ships crossing oceans, to European gardens filled with suspicion, to Italian kitchens, to dinner tables around the world, the tomato traveled a journey unlike almost any other food in history. And perhaps the most surprising part is this: the tomato did not defeat fear with power. It defeated fear with time. Because eventually, truth became stronger than the myth. Centuries ago, eating a tomato could make people question your judgment. Today, the same fruit sits on billions of tables around the world. The same fruit, once called dangerous, became one of humanity's favorite foods. So the next time you slice a tomato, remember what you are really holding. Not just a fruit, but a survivor of history. A reminder that appearances can mislead. A reminder that traditions can be wrong. And a reminder that sometimes the things people fear the most are simply the things they have not yet understood. Because after centuries of suspicion, rumors, and doubt, the world finally learned the truth. The tomato was never the danger people believed it was.
The tomato's greatest achievement was never becoming famous. It was proving how wrong we can be. For centuries, humans looked at the same fruit and saw completely different things. Some saw danger. Some saw mystery. Some saw possibility. But the tomato itself never changed. What changed was the way people understood it. And perhaps that is the most fascinating secret hidden inside its history. The tomato we know today was not created by nature alone. It was shaped by thousands of years of human choices. Ancient farmers selected better plants. Generations of growers improved its qualities. Different cultures transformed it into new foods and traditions.
The modern tomato is not just a plant. It is a living record of human curiosity. Every variety carries a piece of history. Every recipe carries a piece of culture. Every meal carries a story. A tomato growing in a field today is connected to ancient farms in the Americas, ships that crossed oceans, European gardens, Italian kitchens, and countless families around the world. That is the hidden power of food. It connects people who lived centuries apart. It carries journeys that most people never see.